In a recent conference with noted JFK researcher Greg Parker, the Furniture Mart episode was discussed, and that has prompted me to make this video, because I don't have a video on that, so I might as well. And the earliest official document we have documenting this event is this FBI report of a December 14th, 1963 interview with Mrs. Edith Whitworth. Mrs. Edith Whitworth, home address 315 South Jefferson, Irving, Texas, advised that around November 6th, 7th, or 8th, 1963, an individual whom she later knew as Harvey Oswald from his photograph had come into the Furniture Mart where she was working. At the time Oswald came into the store, there was a gun repair sign on the front of the building, which had been left there by the previous occupant. Oswald was directed to a gun repair shop approximately 1.5 blocks away from the Furniture Mart. So apparently Oswald saw the gun store sign, or the gun repair sign, and thought he was entering a gun repair shop, when really it was a furniture shop. Some people might think that that's an unlikely explanation, and Greg Parker was one of those people. Greg Parker thought that Oswald was there because it was a furniture store and he wanted a new plunger for his baby crib. Yes, that's what Parker said. But it's not really very unlikely, as this document demonstrates. Mr. Harold advised that on November 22, 1963, he arrived in Dallas, Texas at approximately 4:45 p.m. on an assignment from the New York office of the Paris Match magazine to make photographs regarding the assassination of President Kennedy. He advised that approximately 5 days after arriving in Dallas, he and Miss Jean Campbell, a correspondent for the London Evening Standard, were in Irving, Texas to contact persons regarding Mrs. Oswald. He stated that as he and Miss Campbell were driving down the street, they noticed a sign that said gun shop, and decided to stop at this place to see if anyone there might know Oswald. Upon entering the shop, they found that it had been converted into a used furniture store and was no longer a gun shop. He advised that they talked to a woman in the store, a Mrs. Edith Whitworth, and asked her if she knew the Oswalds. So here, apparently, exactly what happened to Oswald happened to Mr. Harold and Jean Campbell. They were driving by, they saw a gun shop, and they thought maybe Oswald went into this gun shop. But it was the furniture store, the same furniture store that Oswald did go into. So obviously this is not all that unlikely an occurrence. It was still happening after the assassination. But try telling that to researcher Greg Parker and see what happens. And the gun store to which Mrs. Whitworth directed Oswald happened to be the same one from which a repair tag with Oswald's name on it came from. That is, this is apparently they attached a scope at this gun store for Oswald to the rifle. It's not the plunger being talked about, but we have a receipt from that gun store that Whitworth sent him to. So this corroborates Oswald's appearance at the furniture store, because the store to which he was sent has evidence that Oswald was there and had work done on his gun. So he went to the furniture store first, and then he went to the gun shop. And there's also corroboration in the dates given by the furniture store person and by the gun shop person. Mrs. Whitworth at the furniture store thought it was either the 4th, 5th, or 6th of November. There are various reasons for that I won't get into here. And the dial writer at the gun store said that, well, it's kind of a long, complicated explanation, but one of the dates he gives as a possibility based upon his reasoning is November 6th. So we have the same date given. It's not a sure date from either one of them, but it's the common date among them. That is, each one says it could have been November 6th, And so it probably was November 6th, and this is excellent corroboration that Oswald did go to the furniture store and then afterwards went to the gun store. You won't get much better corroboration than this for something like this. And Greg Parker, to his credit, was not questioning whether or not Oswald had gone to the furniture store. He just was saying that Oswald went there to buy a piece of a baby crib. But if you consider the context here, one is that Mrs. Whitworth said he was in there to buy a gun part and that she sent him to a gun store, and then we have the gun store saying he came there and had some work done on his gun. So I think when you consider the context, you have to dismiss Greg Parker's explanation. Now, returning to the first document again, while in the store, Mrs. Whitworth stated that Oswald inquired as to both a living room and dining room set, stating that he would need both in the near future. While in the store, his wife, carrying a small baby and leading a small girl, came in and observed Oswald's activities, but never made any statement or said anything. When she came in, Oswald told Mrs. Whitworth that his youngest child had been born on October 20th, 1963, and Mrs. Whitworth recalled this date as being at the approximate time that a grandchild of hers had been born. Now, the Warren Commission was desperate to debunk this story, and as we can read here, by letter dated June 30th, 1964, the President's Commission requested that a check be made of the public records of births for the area which encompasses both Dallas and Irving, Texas, to ascertain the names and addresses of female babies born on October 20th, 1963. It was requested that the parents of these babies be interviewed to determine whether any of these families have an older female child approximately 2 1/2 years old, and whether any of these families were in Mrs. Whitworth's furniture store in early November 1963, and under what circumstances. So because Mrs. Whitworth says that Oswald said his baby had been born on October 20th, 1963, the Warren Commission is instructing the FBI to find every baby born on October 20th, 1963, every baby girl, and talk to those parents and find out if they were really this couple and it wasn't really Oswald. And of course, even though the FBI did an uncharacteristically thorough investigation here, they were not able to find an alternate family to fill the bill. And returning to the first document, Oswald remained in the furniture mart approximately 15 minutes, but despite the conversation concerning the infant child, no attempt was made by Mrs. Oswald to exhibit the baby, nor did she permit anyone to look at the child. And I think we should note here that Oswald does seem to think, here in the first week of November, that he's going to be needing furniture, presumably for his new apartment he's going to get after the president is murdered. Perhaps that is worthy of considering the implications of such a state of mind. On leaving the furniture mart, second-hand furniture store, the Oswalds made a U-turn and left driving against the traffic on East Irving Boulevard in the direction of the gun repair shop in either a 1956 or 1957 two-tone blue and white Ford or Plymouth. Now, usually in the documents and in the Warren Commission testimony, this is only called a Ford. It is not usually also having, you don't usually get the Plymouth option, but here in the first statement, we do have the Plymouth option. And it is once mentioned in Whitworth's testimony also, I believe, in one of her testimony sessions, that the Plymouth is an option. And I think it's important to note that that is an option. And that's because Carl Mather owned a 1957 two-tone blue and light blue Plymouth. It's almost the same car by description. And this is just a description. It's not a photograph, so something might be a little off. So before the assassination here, Oswald had been seen driving a car like Carl Mather's car. And this is a description of Carl Mather's 1957 Plymouth with plate number PP4537, and it's it's light blue over medium blue, it says. So it's a two-tone 1957 Plymouth blue, very similar in description to what Mrs. Whitworth saw. And that's interesting because the same license plate that's on Carl Mather's blue and light blue 57 Plymouth was seen on a different car driven by Lee Harvey Oswald down the street from where J.D. Tippit was allegedly shot, and about just after he was shot, as you can read in this document if you want to. So Oswald is driving a car that looks like Carl Mather's car when he goes to the furniture store, and just after J.D. Tippit has been shot, he's driving a car with that car's license plate on it. So this implies that in November of 1963, Lee Harvey Oswald was using Carl Mather's car. And Carl Mather was an old friend of J.D. Tippit, and he had worked for defense contractor Collins Radio, and he had worked on LBJ's airplane before the assassination. And Lee Harvey Oswald had been seen driving a car like Mather's, and another car with Mather's license plate on it, near the scene of Tippit's murder. So I think that's very interesting. Now, of course, the official story has Marina Oswald deny that she had ever been in this furniture store. The Warren Commission actually goes to the extraordinary theater of having her meet Mrs. Whitworth, and she denies it. Maybe she had a good reason. And of course, the official story denies that Oswald could even drive a car. He's certainly too much of a loser to be able to drive a car. And this incident occurred during Oswald's normal working hours, and of course the official story is that means it's impossible because Oswald had to have been at work. I'm not sure about the way this is worded. It sounds like somebody might be trying to avoid perjury. But anyway, the last paragraph. It should also be noted that previous investigation has reflected that Mr. Roy S. Truly, warehouse manager, Texas School Book Depository, Dallas, Texas, advised that the men working at the warehouse of the Texas School Book Depository have regular working hours of 8 a.m. to 4:45 p.m., 5 days per week, with a lunch period from 12 noon to 12:45. He stated, however, that they do not have to punch time clocks, and there was no one who kept a strict accounting of the time they took for lunch. Mr. Truly advised that Lee Harvey Oswald was one of these employees, and that these are the hours he was assigned to work. It does not say that he was at work for all these hours. It says he was assigned these hours. So even though this is a denial that we're supposed to believe, it's not really a specific denial. It's not even saying he skipped a day that we just don't know about. What it's saying is he was supposed to work every day, and he was recorded as having worked every day, and he was paid for having worked every day. So I think this story is true. I think Oswald did drive, and that he was driving Carl Mather's car, and that he was having some work done on a gun. Whether or not it was the Mannlicher Carcano, I don't know. And I think the official story is just a bunch of bullshit. And speaking of bullshit, there's Greg Parker.